Parshas Vayeira, Lot's about Lot. Lot, Avraham's nephew, is incredibly hospitable, particularly since he lives in the town of Sedom, which is notorious for being unkind to guests. Perek Yud opens with two angels coming to Sedom in the evening, Lot sitting at the gate, and he saw them. Vayokom likrosom, and he gets up to greet them, and he says to them, "Please turn aside and stay overnight. Vilinu virachatzu raglechem, and stay overnight and wash your feet." Sforno, commenting on Bereishis Perek Yud Posuk Aleph, says, why does he get up to greet them? And he answers, "Pen yolinu barachov," lest the people have to stay and sleep in the street. Kamo shehoya oz haminhag b'shah ha'arim. As was the custom at that time in that neighborhood, they did not allow guests to stay in their places, and nobody offered hospitality. In such an instance, there was a danger that the guests would be harmed by the residents of the city. Seems very nice. Lot's coming to invite visitors to his home. But we see, if we take a closer look at the Pesukim, that he was a little bit nervous. And he says, "Surreptitiously, come, turn aside." And Rashi comments and he says, "Akmu es haderech leveisi, come a roundabout way to my house." Some sort of derech akaloso, like some sort of go surreptitiously. Shelo yakiru she'atem nichnasim sham, that nobody around should be able to tell and recognize that you're coming into my house. Now that's understandable. Lot was worried that the people of the city would not be happy, and we see later when the mob attacks him, you have to read the rest of the chapter to find out what happens, we can see his concerns are real. When the angels come to his house, Lot says to them, "Vilinu, stay over, virachatzu raglechem, and then wash your feet." Now Rashi suggests that's a strange order. If you're going to have a guest to come and stay over, you don't say to them, "Go to sleep and have a shower in the morning." First of all, they can do whatever they like, and second of all, it's a little bit weird, especially if they've come in the desert. Surely you want to let them have a chance to wash up after their long travels. The thing is, Lot was worried that the people of Sedom would come and say, "Hold on a minute, who are these people who've come to your house?" And if they're there and they're still dirty from their journey, Lot can legitimately say, "Hey, guys, listen, they just sort of arrived," and then he can sort of have an excuse like they just sort of come and they're going to go. "Don't worry, I was never going to let them in." He didn't want them to tidy themselves up. He wanted them to look ragged from the journey. Even more so, this is amazing, that Lot risked his life to offer hospitality to the strangers. Why did he do it? Rashi on Bereishis Yud Aleph says, "Vayar Lot," and Lot saw the strangers and he got up to greet them. Rashi comments, what did he see? Mibeis Avraham lamad lachzor es ha'archim. Lot learned from Avraham's example, from Avraham's house, how to make guests feel welcome. And that's amazing. That's the Rashi quotes the Bereishis Rabbah 54. He copied Avraham, but he didn't quite get it right. Because we see, when Rashi comments, the rest of his comment in Perek Yud Posuk Beis on Vilinu virachatzu raglechem, stay over and wash your feet, Rashi says, Avraham amar lahem, Avraham in the previous Perek, when the angels came to visit him in Perek Yud Ches, Avraham said, "Techila rachatzu raglechem." First he said, "Wash your feet." It seems that the wording's so similar. And Rashi makes his comment connecting us, asking us, begging us, in fact, to compare and contrast Avraham and Lot's behaviour. And we see what Rashi comments on Perek Yud Ches Posuk Daled, when the angels came to visit Avraham. Kasavor shehem aravim, when Avraham noticed that these people were they looked like they were Arabian, shemishtachavim la'avak raglechem, it was usual for people of that religion to worship the dust of their feet. Vehikpid shelo lahachnis avodah zara leveso. Avraham was particular that he didn't want to allow idol worship to come in his house. Aval Lot shelo hikpid, but Lot, who was not particular, hikdim lina l'rechitza. He put sleeping before washing, as we're talking about in Perek Yud that we're reading now. Now, what's so bad about worshipping the dust of your feet? So it's understood that perhaps it means people valued their own ability to do things. They valued where they were coming from and where they were going to, and they felt they were in control of their own destiny, and they didn't feel that they didn't worship Hashem, they worshipped themselves. They served the places they've been to and the places they were going to, the places where their own feet carried them to, like the idea of kochi ve'otzem yodi. I'm going to worship my own footprints and my own path that I've been on and that I'm going to. If we look at these stories, there are loads of similarities in these stories, very, very lots of similarities. And Rashi is effectively begging us to look at it. It says the time of the day, it talks about how many people came, it talks about what food they gave them. And if anybody would like to hear more about this, I've given like an hour-long share, and I'll put the link in the chat when I get a chance. So you'll be able to listen to it if anyone's got time. Lot learned from Avraham the importance of the mitzvah of hospitality, but he missed some of the important details. Before the strangers were allowed in his home, he didn't, like Avraham asked the strangers to wash off some of the outside influence, so that his own hospitality didn't endanger the quality of the home that he built with his wife Sarah. But Lot doesn't take this precaution. Perhaps this indicates for us the nature of a little bit of a failing for Lot. Lot learned from Avraham how to be hospitable, but he didn't necessarily protect himself from the dangers of his guests. Okay? If Lot chose to live in Sedom, we shouldn't be surprised that he was influenced somehow by Sedom. The Rambam in Mishnah Torah Hilchos Deos Vov tells us, Derach Berioso shel Odom. It's natural tendency for a man lihiyos nimshach b'deosov ub'ma'asov achar reov b'chaverov. That he or she can be influenced by the ideas and the conduct by his friends and associates. V'nohei kaminhag anshe medinoso, and follow the habits of those people who live around them nearby in the area where they live. Therefore, it's necessary for a person to keep the company of the righteous and to be near wise people and distance themselves from evildoers. That's not what we should do. And in fact, the psychologist Albert Bandura, he was a Canadian-American psychologist in Stanford University, presented something called social learning theory. And if anybody wants to Google this, he did a very famous experiment in 1961 called the Bobo doll experiment. And he suggests that behavior is learned from the environment through the process of observational learning and indirect reinforcement. Lot had spent many years in the household of his uncle Avraham. He'd seen how Avraham behaved. His kindness and hospitality were legendary. Now, Lot instinctively imitated the patterns of Avraham's life, but these patterns became superficial and habitual. His kindness did not stem from a deep conviction or empathy with people. His kindness was mechanical. It was habitual. Underneath lay the true Lot. And we see that he, later on, when he's with his daughters in the cave, we can see that he's more intent on his own gratification and he's not necessarily sensitive to the needs of others. He chose to live in Sedom, and that was perhaps, he was influenced by that environment, but also he chose that environment. Nevertheless, in Sedom, the old habits persisted, and he continued to go through the motions of hospitality, even at the risk to his life. He was a creature of habit, albeit good habits, but not a man like Avraham, who was principled. And the difference between Lot and Avraham manifested itself in their descendants. Avraham was the essence of kindness. That is a trait that he's passed down to the whole of Klal Yisrael, even to today. Lot's kindness was superficial, and his descendants became the ungrateful nations of Ammon and Moab, and they manifested his true nature. Let's hope we can all be like Avraham, our forefather, and always really truly show kindness and not do it out of habit. Good Shabbos.